Character revivals and revisions have existed in every form of media, from TV shows to movies to video games. There have always been changes or recasts whenever a character is brought back. The biggest shifts have always been in the animation medium, though, which has always shocked me. Now, I understand that artistic styles are different between every single person, and that's not the changes that I'm talking about, because that's more expected. What always shocks me is the dramatic shifts in personality, because you have the base idea of what the character should look like, and then you have the idea of the personality that the character was given, and then you just do a complete and total shift to the point where it's a complete tonal shift and something completely new, but using that character for it. This seems to happen predominantly in the animation field, and I'm not sure why. It's always happened, don't get me wrong. This is something that has been going on for decades, but especially in the last 15 or so years, it has been notoriously noticeable. It has been more dramatic than it has ever been before, and this is only a relatively recent phenomenon. There, and it usually falls into two categories, which are, strangely enough, completely diametrically opposed to each other. And that's another part of the weird aspect of it. The first one is the edgy, hardcore, live-action adaptation of an animated show. Take, for instance, Riverdale, the edgy, live-action Archie comics. The new edgy, live-action Winx Club series. And the soon-to-be new edgy, live-action Powerpuff Girls series. This seems to be predominantly done on either streaming services or by the CW, which is effectively Warner Brothers channel. And it's so weird that it keeps happening consistently like this. There's a reason the joke Netflix live-action adaptation exists, and it's talking about animated shows or movies or whatever that become this stereotype. The live-action edgy has absolutely nothing to do with the original show, looks nothing like it, it's just wearing its skin over it kind of thing. And no one can figure out why, because none of these shows are really that popular, and yet it keeps happening. But then, in the exact opposite field, if they keep a show animated, they seem to G it the fuck up. They seem to kidify it as much as possible. We had Teen Titans to Teen Titans Go. We had Thundercats to Thundercats Roar. Those are just the biggest examples. And you can't use the idea, oh, well, they made it for like preschoolers or very, very young kids or things like that, because they still include a lot of adult jokes in them, or at the very least jokes that would fly over the head of anyone under the age of 6. So I can't figure out why they went for this overall shift like this. It makes no sense. It's part of a larger trend that, again, has been going on for the last 2 decades or so, where the idea that animation is only for children has become more and more mainstream. And I need to explain this one for a second. Back in the 70s, when Hanna-Barbera ruled TV animation, they said that their shows were for kids because they were given no budget at all. They had the crappiest quality of animation that existed because they weren't given anything to do. There's a reason that you often see very close zoom-ins of faces that barely move, or like frames being frozen on for 10 seconds, things like that from the old Hanna-Barbera shows, because they couldn't do anything. They couldn't afford to animate. So they said that their product was for kids as a way to justify how low quality it was, and it worked. That was the first time where it became associated that animation was for children, because before that, Disney's products were the most well-known animated things, aside from the Looney Tunes shorts that came on before movies. And Disney's products were aimed at families, yes, but that doesn't mean it's aimed at young kids, because they wanted everyone to watch it, not just the young children. I'm going to bring up the phrase that I keep saying from Disney all the time. If you aim for children, you're dead. Adults are children who have just physically aged up. This is a sentiment that Walt himself knew that seems to be forgotten in modern animation. Well, over the decades from the time that Hanna-Barbera ruled the airs, animation did start getting more and more all ages rather than just preschoolers. And this hit its peak around the 90s and early 2000s with shows like Avatar, for example. Well, unfortunately, it seems to be regressing since then. At the very least, since about 2010, I would argue earlier, but ever since about 2010, shows seem to be going less and less mature and more very young kid focused. Or at least that's how the executives and even the creators seem to think of the animation industry at large. If this was just executives, producers, suits, I could understand that, but it's not. You hear interviews from people that made Teen Titans Go, Thundercats Roar, any of these modern shows that they are revising, and it sounds like they only think very young children should be watching in the first place. Not because they make the show like that, but because, oh, it's animated, so you're the only ones that should be watching. You're adults making it. Why do you think adults can't watch it? I just do not understand this trend. And one aspect of it that is what got me to talk about this today is this idea of just completely stripping any sort of physical characteristics from women characters in particular. Miss Keen from the new 2016 Powerpuff Girls series, completely stripped of any sort of chest drawing. And the original chest drawing in the original Powerpuff Girls series didn't even have cleavage or anything. It just it showed that breasts exist on women. Oh, the horror? The 2018 She-Ra series, every single woman in that series was a fucking plank of wood. They had no curvature, no shape, no nothing. For as much as it is argued as, oh, well, the original series, you could just put the outlines of all the characters next to each other and you would be able to tell them apart. That's exactly what happened here. They all looked the fucking same. Except back then, in the old 80s show, women had curves because women have curves. Like, that's a biological thing. But here in this show, they just were all flat lines. And then, the newest example of this is the revision of Lola Bunny for the new Space Jam movie. Now, first off, you will never get me to think that, oh, this is just made for young kids, when it's a movie that features LeBron James that is trying to market itself off of the fact that it has LeBron James. No young child knows who the fuck LeBron James is, nor cares. That is trying to get the adults into the theater, okay? And then the second point is, yet again, just completely put a plank of wood. No curvature, no shape, no nothing. What is it with modern animation and removing curves and breasts from women? And the argument I always hear in defense of this, because this seems to be one of the most hardcore things that the left defends, is, oh, well, you only care because you want to fap to it. No, I care because it seems like a needless and senseless change that seems to dehumanize women. By doing this, you are saying that just breasts existing is sexualizing women, which is one of the most baffling things I've ever seen. This comes from the politically correct left, by the way. Back in the 90s, it was the moral and religious right that was trying to censor everything or get everything changed. And even then, breasts existing wasn't a thing that they would go on. They would go on a lot of weird, stupid tangents, but breasts existing was not one of them. Being exposed, yes, or cleavage being exposed, absolutely. Just existing, no. This is purely a moral and politically correct left thing, which I just don't get. You're basically saying that women are not people because they have tits, so we have to remove the tits and remove any sort of curvature so that they are respected as people, or treated the same as men, or something. It's got to be something in this ballpark. I just haven't quite figured out what it is. And that's just so baffling to me. And no, I'm not saying, oh, make huge titties, or, oh, cleavage should be shown at all time. Like, again, the first example I used in this was Miss Keene. Never showed any cleavage, never showed any tits, never showed anything, just that her breasts existed on her because she is a woman. That's it. Hell, in that same series, if you wanted to talk anything about sexualization of a character, you would talk about Miss Bellum, and the whole point of that character was that she was the most intelligent and most efficient character, and just an amazing role model to the girls. So the fact that people only thought that she was being sexualized completely and totally missed the point of the character. Hell, the same with Lola Bunny. I have heard for years that, oh, well, Lola Bunny only exists to be sexualized. If you think that, you never watched the movie. The point of the character was that she was very much opposed to being sexualized and could run circles around anyone that did it to her. She was a strong, independent woman. You'd think that she would have been a feminist icon, but I guess a cartoon rabbit was too pretty for feminists. I to a base level, I understand why this keeps happening, but I don't understand exactly what the argument is, especially because it changes from a day-to-day basis, so that they can keep moving the goalpost and say, "Oh, you're wrong. It's this," and etc. And it's just so insane that just the act of just the biological fact of having curvature is offensive and sexualized. If your idea is, oh, we're trying to desexualize these characters as much as possible, you will never win. Because men and women sexualize everything. The fact that foot fetishists exist and is one of the most common niches that exist should prove that. You can't win. So by doing this, you are saying that the act of having curves or the act of having breasts is a sexualization. Ergo, we must remove them. That's so sexist. It really is. And yet here we are. I just don't know what to make of this, and it seems to be getting worse year on year. This started, I again would argue, about 15 years ago for animation, and especially in the last 5 years, it has revved up at speeds that I would not have thought possible, and it seems to be getting worse every year. I'm hoping that eventually the pendulum swings again, but it's not seemed to hit its apex yet, which blows my mind. I don't want to know how far this will go, because that is absolutely terrifying. We are just going to see so many good characters just absolutely destroyed before this is all done, which is a damn shame, because this will be the legacy that they're known for by the generation that's coming up. They won't be known as the strong characters, the cool characters, the funny characters, the intelligent characters. They will only be known as the desexualized characters. And that's just not something for a character to be known for. That is just one of the weirdest things to try and make it known that your character show. That's the big thing. Oh, we desexualize them. Congratulations, what'd you do for the personality? Yeah. There's the problem. This has been Math Machine talking about animation. Ergo, I must be trying to jack off to something, because that's the only defense that's ever fucking used whenever I talk about animation. Peace out.